start this side. Just want to see if this is working. Okay. Right, good afternoon, everyone. Your Excellency, Honourable Ministers, friends, private sector, thank you for making the time, and I hope the lunch was great. I'm joined here by Tomika, who's the founder of the Visionary Healthcare Consultancy Services, and between us we're going to dissect the housing, land sanitation and quality health work group. I will be the first to say that I was very inspired by the keynote address earlier today by Her Excellency. I really picked up on the passion that came from that address, the partnership with purpose, the eradication of poverty, and I think a lot of us can certainly take note, but also be encouraged by what Her Excellency have said. So our group scope has really been on quality health, housing, land and sanitation, and often these may be seen as silos. But we do believe that these are interconnected areas and that building productive communities and really investing in nodes will enable a good amount of housing, land, sanitation, but also quality healthcare. So what we'll do is we will take you through some of the national priorities, first on the quality healthcare side and then on the housing side, and then both of us will dissect the industries from there.
Thank you. So aligning with the national plans and strategies, the priorities of the public health sector is to improve quality health through expanding access to primary health care. Primary health care is the most inclusive, the most cost-effective, the most efficient, and the most effective way to improve health care for the population. WHO statistics tells us that within the next 5 years, countries that improve their primary healthcare coverage will save up to 60 million lives. That's the population of Namibia 20 times over. Also, if primary healthcare coverage is increased, the projected health gains from the Sustainable Development Goals, we have that chance of countries that do that will have a 75% chance of actually meeting those goals. Another priority is investing in specialized skills using trained specialists, because primary health care is at the bottom of the broadest base of the healthcare pyramid, but we also need to invest in the top tiers like critical care and specialist care. Fast-tracking the implementation of an integrated e-health system is also another government priority.
Thanks. Okay. All right. I think just on the housing side, I think the national priorities are audacious, but certainly doable. And I think one of the things that really comforts us as the private sector is when we look at what government has already achieved, there's already a lot happening. But building 50 homes or 50,000 homes is certainly doable. I think we're very passionate about eradicating informal settlements as a whole, and we believe with this small, 3 million country in terms of population, that it's really possible in 9, and then to accelerate land servicing and security of tenure to enable private investment, and to construct 1,000 sanitation facilities for rural and peri-urban areas.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to very quickly go over this slide. But this slide is just to show that significant input has been put into the public health sector. The public health sector is not an income-generating sector. And definitely you can see that a lot of funds have been put into this sector. So housing. So how can the private sector deliver its commitments towards quality health? We've looked at the 3 pillars of people, efficiency, and infrastructure. And with people, supporting the workforce diversification by funding training programs, internships and scholarships, and this not only for the accepted norms of the health force professionals like general practitioners, nurses, but also through task shifting and creating lower level, entry level jobs so that nurses can focus on what they do best, looking after patients. In terms of efficiency, partnering in the rollout of the national e-health and e-licensing systems, this is also already policy. And in regards to infrastructure, accelerating healthcare infrastructure by creating smart logistics centers, digital integration, efficient supply chains, and warehousing. So what are the key constraints and barriers to promoting quality health? Fragmented coordination between the Ministry of Health and the training institutions and private sectors, resulting in mismatches between supply and demand of healthcare workers. Slow digital transformation, regulatory and procurement bottlenecks, and a limited digital literacy within the healthcare workforce. What are the priority recommendations that we are putting forward? So the first one is to improve primary healthcare accessibility through digitalization. Namibia has got a very high surface area, and a patient can be in Katima Mulilo today and then be 1,000 kilometers south the next day. We therefore need connectivity for patient information so that patient information can be accessed anywhere in the country. We want to build hospital and pharmacy management systems and also expand telemedicine so that anybody in the periphery can have access to the same level of care that they would have in the center. We also want, through digitalization, to create a centralized health database so that there's enough data that can be utilized to make informed decisions in the future. We also recommend the facilitation of the development of a medical tourism framework. The idea is to create centers of excellence with the in partnership with the private sector, so that Namibia can become a regional hub for advanced medical care and contribute to the GDP. Any skills that are lacking in terms of specialists or super specialists, ideally visa and work permit processes will be facilitated in order to enable their participation. We also recommend that local companies be given incentives and priority investment zones be identified so that they are encouraged to build healthcare infrastructure in areas especially that are underserved. The fourth recommendation is to strengthen regulatory support for local medical manufacturers through fast-tracking certification and compliance assistance. We recommend that there be an establishment of a national health task force, inclusive of the private sector. A task force is different from a committee because a task force comes together with a unified purpose, works together until that purpose is completed, and then can disband or continue on to another purpose. The mandate of this task force is to provide formal recommendations within 2 months on all key components. So the focus areas of this task force would be to fill the gap between strategy and implementation. And we've heard again and again that the policies are in place, the strategies are in place, but there seems to be a gap between the implementation of those strategies. And so we recommend that business re-engineering processes, training and capacity development, and quality improvement processes across the healthcare system be strengthened, because we cannot digitize a system that is not efficient. We cannot digitize or improve a system that is not functioning the way it should be functioning. So we want to put that recommendation as a prerequisite. The deliverable would be to to produce within the next 60 days, to produce an e-health roadmap and commit to a 120-day pilot implementation in selected facilities. Feedback loops are very important, and we felt that once the momentum starts, it needs to accelerate, and we therefore recommend that monthly reporting to the presidency to identify and remove bottlenecks in real time. So what are the quick wins that we would like to recommend for the healthcare sector? Still focusing on primary healthcare, to launch digital, excuse me. So what are the quick wins that we can recommend for the healthcare sector? The private healthcare sector can launch digital health pilot sites where we can actually test whether the existing ICT capacity is working and how we can actually integrate data to improve that primary health care. Access to essential medicines is a vital part of primary health care, so fast-tracking certification and dossier approvals, and also providing offtake agreements for local pharmaceutical manufacturers to expand their production capacity. So the last one is to address immediate high-level skill gaps, to advance local training, and to create a conducive working atmosphere for the expanding pool of specialist and super specialist local staff that we have. And again, the public health sector is not an income-generating sector, and increasing high-level skill gaps can drive us in the direction of increasing our national GDP through medical tourism. A few words on social determinants of health. Okay, I think I will stop there. I just want to say social determinants of health are very important. Health cannot improve without other sectors being involved. And I think because of time, I will just stop.
If I can just maybe go back to the constraints. Great. Great, so what are our constraints when it comes to the housing, land, real estate, and sanitation sectors? I think one of the first ones is, if you look at our inputs are really bulk infrastructure, the cost of land, and that is often a hindrance to make affordable housing projects viable. We believe there's a lack of incentives, or targeted incentives at least, for certain sectors, and also that the security of tenure, especially within the informal settlements, is creating limits in terms of access to finance, as it cannot be used for collateral. And then the scarcity of service land and planning regulations, where some planning regulations may be seen as outdated and requires reform. So what are our priority recommendations? And you will see the similar themes cutting across from the previous groups, ourselves, and I think some of the others. And digitalization is a key one of those. We believe for the real estate industry to thrive, we need to have a national digital property database where your security titles or title deeds are secured and centrally stored to remove and get away from the administration at the moment, the manual administration of that task. We believe we can unlock the formation or formalization of informal settlements, and this will create a significant amount of jobs. When we've looked at the industry in terms of ratios, and these are not 100% verified, you can create between 5 and 7 jobs for every home. And that, when we extrapolate that back to the job requirement, can make quite a significant improvement. Then to unlock funding solutions through government partnerships and private sector partnerships, also through municipal mandates. But if we come closer to home in terms of the private sector, to create security of tenure within these informal settlements so that private sector can invest and use those investments to help with the servicing of land. And then I think similarly to the healthcare, to the other side of the spectrum of real estate is to bring high net worth individuals into our country, to look at that real estate desert visa program, so we can track the right level of funding or high net worth individuals. But that should also come with clear thresholds and social impact conditions to stimulate construction and GDP growth. So similarly, we recommend that we come up with a National Housing, Land and Sanitation Task Force. These task forces are not just meant to be another committee. As Their Excellency has said, it's not just about all the meetings, it's about really implementing what we need to prioritize. And the focus areas are very similar. It's all around digitalization of the sector, but then also to develop standardized approaches in terms of property development and ownership, but specifically on the informal side, to implement centralized procurement that is to be managed by the private sector so that we can really build those homes at the most affordable prices. So Her Excellency has asked us to make some bold requests in terms of quick wins, and we've certainly come up with a few. One of the ones we're looking at is to reduce the minimum single residential ERF size from 300 square meters to 150 square meters. Now, there's lots of debates about this particular item, why not and why for, but we believe that this will allow us to, on a quicker basis, create a more dense environment at a lower cost to the consumer. We understand that we live in a desert country and there's a lot of land, but we also understand that there's a big amount of homes for us to build in the next 5 years. Some more bold statements is at the right-hand bottom of the screen, and a lot of groups will talk about tax incentivization, and this comes really with a few bold requests. I think we've seen on the 1st of October some of the tax changes have removed the assessed losses that's been available to the industry, which is really hampering us from an investment perspective. So one of the really bold requirements or requests would be to remove that limitation of the 5 years. However, if that's not possible, to try and align it to long-term investments like real estate, where often your building allowances is given over a 20-year period. So to try and align it at least away from 5 years to 20 years. And then lastly, if you look at the Competition Commission thresholds, for every acquisition or merger you make above 15 million, you have to get Competition Commission approval. And whilst we are open to that's a good approach in terms of making sure that competitive practices are aligned, that is really outdated when you compare thresholds with other areas, including South Africa. In South Africa, as an example, the thresholds of the Comcom has evolved over time and is way above 100 million at the moment for each acquisition. I think one of the key things for unlocking big pieces of land, big acquisitions, is looking at those thresholds of the Competition Commission. And then maybe to operationalize infrastructure funding, but also mobilize private capital. We believe in the private sector that we can really play a part here. Yes, we need to look at the DBN, we need to look at maybe some European funds in terms of finding access to capital to help with land servicing of informal settlements. But we also believe in the private sector that with subject to be given security of tenure, that we can make real investments in informal settlements and that we can create thriving communities around that. So, Her Excellency, I hope we've given you some good food for thought for both the healthcare as well as the housing and real estate sectors, and we also believe that this may be one of your most favorable sectors, as Gijs said earlier on. So I will open up for questions.
Thank you very much for that. Just the technical team, please, when I come up the steps, I'm a bit heavy. I can hear myself on the speaker, so please reduce the mic when I come walking up. So that, I know I've worked hard for the little kapunda, but we don't want to hear the sound on stage. Yeah. Nonetheless, we're opening up the floors. I hope the sustenance was good. I know the rain interrupted us a little bit, but I'm glad to see that the room is exactly as full as it was before we went for lunch. Again, just a reminder, the plan really is not to have a deliberation on this platform. That's what the working groups are for. But we have, of course, also acknowledged the fact that there are additional contributions that will be of value going forward. So there is an email address that has been created. I think the team is going to put it up in the next few minutes. It is the numppf@nipdb.com, so that if you don't get a chance to ask a question, you can at least forward your contribution there. All the contributions are equally important. And platform is open. Once again, please stand, name, organization, and 30 seconds for your contribution. Okay, with any takers? Okay, let's start there with number 1. Please hold the hand very high like you're in a classroom so I can be able to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Matthew Haikali. I'm a sports consultant with Just Imagine Sports. I think mine is towards health. Data from the Statistics Agency puts over 600,000 athletes participating in sports in this country. If sports was given the recognition it deserves, then it can contribute to reducing the non-communicable diseases. And I'm just thinking this would also help us in training more professionals who understand sports injuries and create jobs for both the sports sector, but also for the health sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Matthew. So we've got one here. Can you please put the hand up high so the team can be able to see where you're sitting? There we go.
Afternoon, everyone. So my name is Josiah Anoshike. I'm from the Namibia Business Angel Network. So my question is really around property. I think in Namibia we have a huge challenge with making enough homes available for ordinary Namibians. So what is the big challenge with property development in this country, from low income to middle income in particular houses? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's it. We'll take that one, and then do we have any more takers? Just by a show of hands, so the mic can come to you already. All right. Okay, that's our last one.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Nian Berg, the CEO of NAMFAM. I just want to thank the opportunity and for the platform. I stand here today as a young businessman and as a proud Namibian. And after the opening speech of Excellency this morning, I've never been so motivated. So we would like to make a difference. As I said, I'm from NAMFAM. Our key and one of our key success factors is automation, systems, development, and we are more than willing to integrate with the government just to facilitate that process, free of charge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rapporteurs, I heard free of charge. Can somebody please just make sure on paper what that commitment entails, so we don't have arguments tomorrow when it's time for delivery. But thank you very much. Just another round of applause. That's the level of patriotism and commitment that we need, that builds this country. And I think, having mentioned that, it just quickly reminds me of something. We had a funeral of Charles Garaisa recently, which impacted the mining industry. In fact, they're going to be coming up next. But the reason why that one was such a big impact was the Rossing Foundation that was set up through that corporate social investment was the place where many of us went to go and do homework and have soup kitchen after lunch. So those sort of contributions are very, very important. You don't know how much difference that kind of corporate social investment makes in the life of young Namibians. Let me just give you the platform to respond to some of those questions.
Okay, I'll take one of the questions. There was a question from Josiah about property development and what some of the challenges are that we are facing as companies. I think there's a number of challenges. The first one is the access to service land. It's becoming very expensive. Different municipalities have different models and how they operate. Some of the municipalities where there's a lot of development, the land is going up on auction, and the price of the land is becoming super expensive. And I think for us to meet these targets, we need land that is affordable, that developers can utilize, because ultimately that cost end up for the consumer or at the consumer. Also security of tenure. Obviously, for a bank to give a loan to a consumer, there needs to be security of tenure, there needs to be solutions to that, and I think that's always very difficult with informal settlements, and until we find a solution for that, it will be a challenge. But then also when we come and look at municipalities, time to approve plans, is taking a very long time, and it can really differ from municipalities. In some it can take 4 to 6 months or longer, in others 2 to 3 months, so it is really dependent on municipalities. And then also, as I said earlier, on the size of the erven. I think sometimes we have planning regulations with good intentions, but sometimes you need to be able to reduce those erven so that you can build houses and homes and rather deliver on those priorities.
Any additional comments? Any more takers from the floor before we close off this session?
Can I just make a comment?
Okay, looks good. I think we'll give you a platform for final reflection for the both of you. Thank you.
Okay, so the one thing that I would like to get across is that on one of the slides you saw how much input the public sector, how much in terms of funding the public health sector receives. But even if public facilities are converted into excellent facilities, even if we have excellent services, we cannot improve the health of the population unless we also affect the social determinants of disease. So where a child lives, where a child goes to school, where a child grows up, is just as important in determining the health of the population as in improving the health facilities. And I just want to contextualize for you what the next 5 years means to me. The Sustainable Development Goals in 2030 are around the corner. But I want you to think of it in terms of a child that is born today in Katutura State Hospital. For that child, the clock starts ticking today. Over the next 60 months, that child will go through 60 of the most crucial, the most important, the most vital months of its life in terms of mental, physical, and social well-being. For that child, today matters. For that child, every day matters. So the point I want to bring across to you is that from this point onwards, there needs to be a concerted, relentless, forward movement of public-public, private-private, and public-private partnerships. So I want you to think of it in terms of that child that is born today.
I must say, I love the passion that comes out. And I think to enable that, we need to also look at communities. A lot of the factors out there in terms of the numbers, in terms of the homes we need to build, the jobs we need to create, really centers, in my opinion, around communities. And for a community to be successful, you need to build homes, but you also need to create that sense of community around that. And that must have anything from commerce to education, retail, sports facilities that we've heard earlier on, to really give that person a sense of community. And I think that's really where the private sector and the public sector can come together so that we can build those communities and allow, for a prosperous country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you please give another warm round of applause to Ben Yorster, Tommy Kazaru. Please stand there for 2 seconds just for that picture. If it's not in the annual report, it did not happen. Nonetheless, we are moving on to another crucial working group. They say that for a country, for a state, for a nation to survive, there are three very, very important things that need to be secure for that nation. That is, of course, water, as well as energy and food security. So a very, very important session that's coming up now. In terms of energy, oil and gas, we know that there is a major, major shift that we're looking at, not only for oil and gas, but green industrialization. We've seen how that has been elevated, the energy ministry to the Deputy Prime Minister's office. Outside of that, of course, the President had made a very, very bold statement and direction for the administration that natural beneficiation will be the focus of administration, and of course also made provision for the upstream oil and gas unit, or petroleum unit rather, in the presidency, showing the seriousness of this industry. Please, just to reflect on what are the three most important priorities for all three, please help me welcome Dr. Grant Muller from the Namibia Green Hydrogen Association to please come to the front. As well as Eduardo Rodriguez from the Namibia Petroleum Operators Association, representing the oil, gas, renewable energy, and of course the green hydrogen sectors together. Please give them another warm round of applause as they make their way here.
Okay. Your Excellency, members of the government, colleagues, all protocols observed. It's an honor to be here in this amazing day. And I think we're seeing already results. Earlier, we had from the agriculture that there shall be water, and immediately we got water. So, Your Excellency, congratulations. You already started executing, so my congratulations on that. Also, this platform is amazing. I am amazed, and this is one of the things that I love about Namibia, that Namibians are very critical of yourselves, and that's great because it keeps the discussion. But at the end, you're unique in many sense. I've worked in many countries, and it's the first time that we have such an audience of the private sector and the government, including the head of state, the president, present here. I have never seen that, and it's an honor to be here. So we're the working group number 4 about energy, renewables, and oil and gas. And we have prepared for everybody 4 slides, which we have 5 minutes for each slide, and hopefully we can conclude in that time. So to get started, why is this working group quite important? As we can see, it is definitely it can offer a transformative change in the gross domestic product, in the GDP for the nation. It can really turn around things. If we get the royalties, if we get the taxes out of this industry, it will benefit the health center, the health system, the education system, everything that is related. So that's a big benefit of this sector. And we cannot ignore that it does have a contribution to employment, clearly advancing the agenda of the nation. So there's a couple remarks. These industries are, there's no government equity involved in it or funding required. So it is completely up to the investors, all the money that is poured into this sector, which is very important. And the government just needs to focus on stable political and regulatory frameworks. Now, let's look at the, how it aligns with the NDP and the manifesto. On the green hydrogen, it is stated to produce 1.3 million tons per annum, and green ammonia, and in direct reduced iron, DRI, about 2 million tons per annum. The good thing is that, and here my colleague Grant will explain it in further detail. Green ammonia, the projections or the target of the industry is 2.2 in green ammonia, and in DRI about 2 million tons per annum. So it's completely aligned with the agenda. An important contributor to the GDP is $2 billion to the economy of the nation, and an important contribution on direct jobs of 30,000, and that's only direct jobs that can be multiplied by indirect and induced jobs. So on the green hydrogen agenda, very aligned with the objectives. In the oil and gas, similar, it has been selected as a critical economic enabler, as Her Excellency explained this morning, with a very aggressive target, I have to say, which is 150 million barrels of oil equivalent per day by 2030, which is quite high. That is equivalent to about a little bit over 400,000 barrels per day, which will be the equivalent of about 3.5 offshore projects. So I think it's a stretched target, but the industry is working hard. At this stage, there's one announced FID, but the industry is hoping for more FIDs by 2030. FID stands for Final Investment Decision. And also, there's some, according to publicly available information, there's a projection to have one project done, one FID done next year, which will entail a production unit by 2030, which will bring around 150,000 barrels per day. So not quite the targets, but these are big investments. We're talking about 10 to 15 billion US dollar investment, so it's something that is considerable. Impact to the economy, according to the NDP 6, we're talking about 7% for one FPSO, that's one project, or about 25% if we get to 4 FPSO, which could be transformational to the Namibian economy. We're not there yet, but we hope to be, and then we're gonna talk about the areas to try to get there. In terms of job creation, although the oil and gas is not a employment-intensive industry, it does produce quite a bit. If we have one project, we're talking about 12,000 jobs. Estimate is according to the industry baseline study that was conducted by Deloitte, where minority is on direct employment, but the amount that it produces in indirect and induced is quite large. If we take it to 4 FPSOs, we're talking about 45,000 jobs, which is quite significant. Again, most indirect and induced. And for the renewable part of the electricity and biomass, we're talking about 367 megawatts of renewable energy. Those are the plans, and the targets are around 400 megawatts by 2030. And the local solar photovoltaic production could contribute about 37 billion Namibian dollars and give about 800 direct jobs. So as we can see, it's a complete alignment with the government targets and completely transformative for the Namibian economy. Now, before I give the word to my colleague, let me talk about the oil and gas industry. First of all, going to my comment at the beginning that we're a little bit critical sometimes. What has happened in Namibia, it's amazing in the last 3.5, 4 years. Right now, we are drilling as an industry the 26th well. So well 26 since the first discovery that was achieved in 2022. So clearly, things are working. Clearly, things are working. 26 exploration wells is something that it's unheard of, and Namibia has been able to achieve it. This accounts about 2.6 to 3 US billion of complete risk investment, and that has all come to Namibia. So there's a clear, strong confidence on Namibia in terms of investment in the oil and gas sector. Now, we have, now it can be bigger and it can be better, and we have selected 3 areas of priority or to discuss. The first one is local content. Okay, local content, we have to clarify that it's in the forefront of the priorities of the oil and gas industry, of all the operators, of all the service contractors, and we need to every day push for it. We have to also acknowledge the great intervention that we had with the UPU and the ministry, where we discussed openly the local content policy, and we had a very constructive dialogue. And at the end, that's what it's all about. The main recommendation is let's continue the dialogue, let's continue to understand what is important to the nation, what is important to the investor, and let's have consensus and build a joint agenda, because as Gaze was mentioning, we are all pushing in the same direction. A couple of recommendations to keep the pace of the oil and gas industry. It's let's make sure that it's, the local content policy is prudent and appropriate for the stage that we are in Namibia. What I mean by that is that we need to implement the local content policy in a phased approach. What is a phased approach? A phased approach is that we need to clearly differentiate between, sorry, I forgot to pass the slide. We need to, sorry, no, I was right, sorry. So we need to clearly differentiate the exploration phase from the development and production phase. In the exploration is very uncertain, and we gotta make sure that the momentum of investment continues, because the more drilling, the more seismic activity is done, the higher the chances of success will be, and we cannot reduce the pace of that investment. Once you move into a development and production phase, there we need to start getting more rigid with specific targets and incentives, because you can plan in the long term. So that's something that we have discussed openly, so this is no surprise. And we need to be very conscious so it doesn't slow down the investment. As well, the policy needs to be flexible and not rigid, to give enough flexibility for the regulator to adjust so that the investment pace doesn't slow down, while still pushing very hard on the local content agenda. And I think earlier somebody talked about inferiority complex and this kind of word, which I think not at all in this case. I think as Namibians, we have all the ingredients to make the local content policy the example for the rest of the world. You are benchmarking from other countries, you're grabbing what is good and what can be improved, and I think we have all the ingredients to make it an example for the rest of the world. One of the solutions, it is the industry baseline study, a best practice among all countries. If we get that right and we make it an evergreen project or baseline, that could be the roadmap for all of us so that we can do proper planning. So let's keep pushing as it's already in the agenda. The second point, Your Excellency, is, okay, how do we grow the industry? And how do we accelerate investment? And there's 2 specific things that we would like to request. It's open for new licenses. At the moment, all the exploration has been done in the Orange Basin, and we have the rest of the world to explore. There's several licenses open in the rest of the Namibian Ocean, which are ready to be tendered and to be awarded so that companies can start. Just to give some perspective, if you award a license today, it goes to an exploration license, that's 4 years. 4 years you shoot seismic. Then after that, you commit to a well. If the well is successful, then you have to do 3 appraisal wells, and then if everything is successful, so we're talking about 8-year time span. So as the proverb says, if the tree takes 100 years to grow, we must plant it today. So you have license available, let's try to award them and have the investors invest more in Namibia, which we want to do it. And the other thing is, the exploration phase is about acquiring information. And we need to also facilitate that the data trade of information between companies is expedited in a quicker and more easier way, so that information flows so that we can de-risk this basin as quickly as possible. And last but not least, looking at the ranking of the IMD World Competitiveness, where Namibia sits at 68 out of 69 countries, one of the topics that could increase the competitiveness is going into the stability of certain contracts, and oil and gas is very particular, especially the offshore, because you're putting all the investment up front, and we're talking about 10, 12, 13, depending on the complexity of the project, of billion US dollars. So it is important that we start the discussions on possibilities of rebalancing clauses. And what a rebalancing or stabilization clause it is, please, let's find a mechanism that what we agreed today is maintained through the life of the contract. And that's a discussion that we need to start, and that will push from projects from exploration to FID, which is that big investment decision. And the other aspect that can increase the competitiveness of the country as well is arbitration. So ratification of international conventions of arbitration, and that will just fall into the international standards of ease of doing business. So I think there's a great opportunity. The oil and gas sector is behaving, is in an accelerated space. Let's don't slow down the space, and let's try to work on these aspects that will help enhance the investment in the country. And there's just two more things that we wanted to talk that Ms. Nangula didn't allow us to put, but there were just three priorities, but they have already mentioned. Work permits and visas, which is already in the agenda of the discussions, and clearly work on the infrastructure of tomorrow to make Namibia more competitive. Thank you very much, and a pleasure and honor being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Honourable Ministers, Governors, distinguished guests, captains of industry. Allow me to stand on the protocol already established. My name is Grant Miller. I'm representing the Namibian Green Hydrogen Association, and we'll be talking to those slides. And we'll also be speaking on behalf of the Working Group for the Electricity Sector. So if you'll allow me, I'll jump straight into some of the challenges and the recommendations that we'd like to put forward today. So the first challenge that we'd like to highlight is the delay in sector maturity. And actually we see this as 2 points. One, slow market demand, and the second, the speed of execution of permitting and approval processes. And here our recommendation would be that we establish an interministerial coordination and governance structure to oversee the development and implementation of these strategic projects. And in this regard, I'd like to just recognize that we know that government is looking at that, and we'd like to express our appreciation in that regard. And then the second one would be demand creation mechanisms and diplomacy. And our recommendation here is to expand green hydrogen diplomacy in support of creating international demand by positioning Namibia as a strategic partner, and therefore creating a contract for differences mechanism, as has been mentioned in NDP 6. You may have read over the past months there have been some headwinds, but however, as developers, I can confirm that we are still optimistic about Namibia. We believe that the ammonia and hydrogen price is on the low side of the cost curve, and we are still committed in taking this forward. But if you'll remember in the PV industry, which started many years ago, the initial projects required international support, and they required incentives to actually catalyze the industry and get the industry moving. And we think it's these initial agreements and CFDs that are really going to make a change in actually catalyzing our industry. Under strategic projects, we'd like to recommend respectfully the designating of projects listed in NDP 6 as nationally strategic, and assigning a responsible entity or governance structure within the government to support project developers to expedite approvals for these projects. If we move to the second challenge, that is, we see that the fiscal regime is not competitive when compared to other countries. So here, what I'd like to also recognize is that the green hydrogen sector is a nascent industry, and that we're competing with other countries around the world. As an association, when we look at the other entities within the association, we don't look at each other as competitors. We see the competitors being Morocco, Mauritania, Oman, because they have a similar resource to us. And so taking cognizance that the work has been done on this topic with regard to the SEZ zone, our recommendation is benchmarking of Namibia against other countries and establishing a globally competitive fiscal regime that enables Namibian projects to be competitive internationally, whilst fairly and handsomely compensating Namibia for the establishment and operation of the industry. And then our third challenge is specific sectoral legislation. And before I talk to that recommendation, I'd like to just put some context to this. Due to the sheer size of the proposed projects, the one dilemma that the project developers are actually facing is the limited track record of large-scale projects in Namibia, particularly those based on a project finance basis. And what that means is that 70% of the capital expenditure, is financed by debt. And these investors need confidence that the project revenue going forward will not be impeded by future changes in law. So our recommendation is to establish a comprehensive set of investor and financier protections to provide long-term certainty, which is required for these lenders' requirements, such that the multi-billion-dollar US investments can actually be made in the country. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to turn to the electricity, biomass, and renewable energy sector, and I'm going to be presenting on behalf of the subsector working group the challenges that they have identified. And the first one really relates to export transmission capacity, and they've listed three bullets here, and the one is the urgent engagement with South Africa, Zambia, and Botswana to identify grid strengthening, expansion opportunities. There's also a quick win with the Zambezi interconnector, which, if flexibly operated, could allow renewable energy generators to use the line, and then implement legislative measures to encourage private sector investments in grid capacity. The second one speaks to modified single buyer, that's MSB rules, restricting investment. And here the recommendation is that for embedded generation projects to allow take-or-pay agreements to operate within the complexity of MSB scheduling and balancing, and for exporters to allow the source of balancing to be identified and appropriate balancing charges to be implemented. And then the third one also talks to the MSB. I'm not going to speak to that, but I think to summarize, the priorities under the electricity sector are to unlock the transmission export capacity. I think this speaks to the targets in NDP 6 as well, because in order to reach the targets of 1.4 gigawatts, we will need to export. And the second one is to remove the current barriers that are in the MSB to increase the uptake. As mentioned by Dr. Titus Nepala this morning, industrialization of our country will only take place if we have low-cost, reliable electricity, and we also believe having green molecules available as well will support the industrialization process. So I'm going to conclude in saying Namibia is standing on the cusp of a fantastic opportunity in the sector, an opportunity that is funded predominantly by foreign direct investment, and where governments ask is to please create an enabling environment. An opportunity that, if is realized, will result in a step change in GDP and decent employment. The risk that we run is if we miss this window of opportunity, the capital will be deployed elsewhere and the opportunity will be lost. And so our respectful request and plea to government is that we need to take hands as private and public sector to expedite meaningful solutions to these constraints and challenges that we are facing. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now open the floor to questions that speak to the oil and gas, the green hydrogen, and of course, the energy sector. Please remember to limit your questions or comments to 30 seconds. Remember to state your name and also the institution that you represent before asking your question. I see a number of hands. There's a gentleman right in the middle with a white shirt. If we can start off with him.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jason DeCartere. I'm the global CEO for Solar Century Africa, and we're a IPP, a green energy provider. I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity to speak. And we've been involved now, thanks to Nangula, who kind of really cajoled us into Namibia 4 years ago. And I said I would like to build solar sites in Namibia. And she said, okay, but you have to start a company, you have to employ Namibians, you have to invest. And that's what we've done. So we brought in over $20 million US. We employ people. As I stand here today, we're employing 350 people, Namibians, in Namibia, of which 137 of those are under 26 years old. So, and we've been committed to Namibia for a long time, 4 years. But if I'm very honest, we've had to fight every single step of the way. And that's been with licensing, it's been with grid access, and even today, I think the battle is pretty constant. In comparison, if I compare that to Zambia, where 10 months ago we came up with a new project, and 10 months later we're actually flowing power into the grid. And that's because a very willing utility, a very willing regulator, and a very willing sort of government structure to do that. And now, here in Namibia, we're doing 17 megawatts. In Zambia, we're going to be doing 400. And that is, I think, unfortunately, a direct impact of the difference in legislation and the difference in how the industry is being enabled. And that's what I would like to say. I will choose Namibia over Zambia every single day, but please help me to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we can please, Khadija, give the microphone to the gentleman right next to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Yalo Yanangolo. I'm Managing Director of Anurep Limited. We're the only renewable energy company that's listed on Namibia Stock Exchange. With respect of investment, we started a company, we listed in 2019, and today we have deployed capital more than 1.2 billion in terms of assets on the ground. And we are one of the biggest developers in the country. And in fact, we are running the lowest cost power plant at Kan, Moses Maguwe, Garweb. And so I want to point out to your first slide where you've alluded to that there's only target about 300 megawatts that have to be implemented going forward, or 400 megawatts, and that will give you about 8,000 jobs to be created. I agree with that, and if you look at Namibia, 9 years ago we had almost zero renewable in the grid. Today we're consuming about 10% of our grid from renewable, IPP, I'm talking about independent power producers, outside of national utility. Now, for me, the lowest hanging fruit is for Namibia to really go bold in the renewable. Currently is knowledge that the region have in deficiency of about 5,000 megawatts. That's the 5 gigawatts of power in the region. And if Namibia can produce such a power, in fact, it's 10 times that amount that we're talking about here, and put a battery and allow for private company to invest in interconnectors in the region, we'll be able to trade power. Like my gentleman next to me was talking about that, he can invest in Namibia, we'll be able to attract all the investment here. We've done so in the past 9 years. We can, 10 times that energy going forward, and the capital is here. It's just about to unblock and put that in our national agenda. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency and our panel.
Sorry, do you mind just... I cannot see who the next speaker is.
I'm here.
Okay, sorry, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Gershon from Kaoko Green Energy Solution, a startup that is looking at developing renewable energy assets here in Namibia. For me, as being part of the working group, there are two things that of great importance, I think, that we need to raise today. The issue of baseload. It's a very important aspect that I didn't see being alluded to. Perhaps maybe the colleagues there could maybe look into it because it's a very important aspect as we have the coast that we can utilize to actually harness energy out of it. And then the next point is the issue of nuclear, which is very high on the agenda of the government. Something perhaps also that needs to be relooked at, or something, or important topic that needs to be discussed. And I believe perhaps maybe if none of them can maybe share it now, perhaps maybe it's something that perhaps maybe the atomic forum perhaps maybe can maybe come back to us, or maybe have if there's any working group or any agency that is out there, perhaps that needs to look at that as well. And as I said, from our side as Kaoko, we are happy to contribute and add where we can add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I kindly ask that we wait to be recognized before proceeding to ask the questions? Thank you. Can I ask Khadija for the gentleman standing right next to you? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Indongo. My surname is also Indongo. I'm from the skills development sector. And I choose to ask my question, particularly to this new emerging sector, because there is something that the young people that we are impacting with skills keep asking. The local content policy and the promotion of Namibian participation, what is that we are going to do differently to ensure that Namibians do not become middlemen in this particular sector and not also briefcase participants, but real participation where they want to own companies and be part of the value chain within the particular sector? What is that we are going to do? Because what we have seen, the likes of Dinapamas, these were the last companies that were established. But what we have been seeing for many sectors is just middlemen. Somebody is in construction, he don't own a wheelbarrow. He get a tender, he sell it tomorrow, nothing happened. It goes back. What is that in the local content policy that we can look forward to that would allow maximum Namibian participation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will hold the questions at that for this round. And I'd kindly ask for our panelists to reflect on those contributions we've just received. We'd heard from our IPPs who've spoken to regulatory bottlenecks limiting the size and scale of projects. We've also heard about some low-hanging fruit and the encouragement to go bold when it comes to renewable energy in order to fill regional energy deficits. When it comes to baseload energy, maybe some reflections in terms of nuclear. And then finally, on local content, how can we make sure that Namibians are in the driving seat? Mr. Rodriguez, earlier you'd spoken to the fact that Namibia is able to benefit from learning lessons from other countries who've gone before us. So maybe if you can also just guide on that. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. I'll address the local content and let Grant address the energy comments, all right? So on local content, what are we doing as the government and the industry? There's been a lot done at this moment. So to start, there's the intensive work that is being put in the local content policy and the active participation of all the sectors. Now, that policy has to be as I explained, it has to be aligned with the phase of the industry that we are right now. The complexity of where we are in the oil and gas is that the exploration phase is very uncertain. You work very hard to try to do an exploration well, and then you don't know what's going to happen afterwards until you drill, and then after you drill, then the next action is determined. And that's what we have right now in the industry. So Imagine a company or somebody that prepares that doesn't have that continuity. It is very challenging in terms of risk, in terms of exposure. So that's why it's very important that we do it in a phased and prudent approach. Now, what is being done? There's many companies that have settled in the country that are creating internships, that are creating positions. There's many bold investors that have invested in local companies and that they're trying to move forward and be ahead of the curve in this initial phase of the oil and gas. In addition, there's great attributes that we need to work on top of that, which is working with UNAM and NUST and the TVET institutions to make sure that we train properly the people to address the future needs. But we must do that in an orderly fashion. And to do that in an orderly fashion, we have done an industry baseline study that we're planning to do as an industry, a refresh for next year, and that is going to give the roadmap depending on the different scenarios in terms of what type of suppliers are needed and what type of the phase of the oil and gas, as well as what skill levels are needed. And on that, we need to work very close with academia. We need to work very close with the finance sector to finance the businesses, and as well, we need to work very closely with a tremendous asset that Namibia has, which is Petrofund. Petrofund is a fund established to fund Namibians in the education for oil and gas. So we have, I think, all the ingredients to make it happen and be a reality and be an example. So I think to answer your question, what can we learn? I think we've learned already what the other countries have done, and they told us what not to do, but now we're going to tell the rest of the world how it's done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think there were 3 questions on the electricity side. I will try and address the first one from Jason and Elo to say that our utility and our regulator are probably the best in the region. I think NamPower has done a great job in keeping the lights on, especially 2015. But if one has a look at the facts, in 2019 we're the most progressive country in terms of market liberalization. We announced the modified single buyer market rules, and it was enacted. In 2021, South Africa removed a lot of their requirements. Generation license were no longer required on generators bigger than 100 megawatts. They've recently introduced a private transmission model where private companies can finance, operate electricity infrastructure. They now have trading companies which aggregate electricity between suppliers and off-takers. There are several C&I PPIs, so that means commercial and industrial PPAs, that have been signed between the likes of Sasol, Air Products, Anglo American. And so I think we're a little bit behind in terms of that. And I think that's therefore the comment from the electricity sector group that we should have a look at the barriers that are busy stopping us in the modified single buyer, because this is impacting us, and we really need to try and push to get low-cost electricity into our country. Then just to maybe quickly touch on the baseload question, I think that once NamPower's solar PV projects come online, actually we're going to have a surplus of daytime energy. And so I think we're talking more about peaking and off-peak type energy, but your concern is absolutely noted. And I think it really needs to be taken back to NamPower and fed back into the NIRP, which is what really guides the generation mix for the country. And then just on the nuclear, would like to refer that to the Atomic Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we'll take our final round of questions. If there are any remaining questions for our panelists, can I get an indication, just a show of hands, if there are any questions? I see there's a gentleman right at the back wearing a black shirt. If you can just get a microphone to him. There's also another gentleman right in the middle wearing a gray shirt. Sir, please keep your hand up just so they locate you. Go ahead, sir.
Good day, everyone. My name is Pius Samuel. I'm from Breakwater Offshore Services. I'd like to ask a question to Eduardo. Firstly, let me just say we 100% agree with the phased approach of implementing the local content policy. Now, with the oil and gas exploration, phase one is usually the exploration phase, like you've articulated. So my question is, how do local companies, or is there any possibility for local companies to participate in that phase, so to say? Because what I'm getting is that, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm getting from what you're saying is that during the exploration phase, there isn't that much of local participation, and that local companies should rather wait for production and the other phases that are to follow. Like I stand to be corrected. Maybe you can just give a bit of clarity on that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir in the middle, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Knowledge Ipinge. I'm from the Namibian Association for Offshore Oil and Gas Service Providers. My intervention is on the benchmarking. As much as we're saying we should benchmark against the international countries and all that, we also have case studies we need to look at locally, especially our fishing industry. We face so many challenges, especially with skilled laborers. So as much as we say creating jobs, that's something that we know that, for example, we've had challenges to get Namibians actually on offshore in some of the vessels as limitation to laws we have, like the Merchant Shipping Act of 1951, as well as the Admiralty Law, which has limited also institutions like NAMDOC. So when we're speaking about the FPSOs, these challenges are still going to be there. As much as we train and all that, we're still going to be faced with this. And I believe that it is important that the working group also integrate this into their recommendations as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now take our final question. I see there's a hand right at the back.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Joseph Mukendwa. I am from the Namibia Green Hydrogen Program. A comment and a question that is potentially a recommendation. I just wanted to understand, earlier we had discussions around operating in silos, and there is a perception out there that green hydrogen and the emerging oil and gas sector are competing, and I think they should be complementing, and they are complementary. When we talk about skills development, I've looked at the industrial baseline survey for the oil and gas sector. The skill sets that we need for that sector are the very same skill sets that we need for emerging green hydrogen as well. What is it that we're doing to ensure that we work together, that we collaborate, that we utilize our limited resources to ensure that we drive this agenda? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We will now take those 3 questions. I believe the questions that we've received speak to, firstly, how can we make sure that, or rather actually, how long should local companies have to wait until they're able to participate in the oil sector? The next question speaks to the possibility of learning from other local and domestic sectors, and perhaps we can learn if there's been any benchmarking that's taken place. And then finally, when it comes to operating in silos, is there scope for collaboration between the emerging sectors, particularly green hydrogen and oil and gas? I'll hand over to our panelists.
Okay, I'll start and then I'll pass over the last question to you. All right, if it's okay. So on the first question about the phase approach, should local companies participate in the exploration? Absolutely, absolutely. And we have very good case studies for example, not only Namibian companies that are participating locally, but also internationally. In the most restrictive service that there is for the oil and gas, such as the aviation. So there's indeed companies that can provide that service, and there's other ones that are growing and they're learning and they're trying to manage the risk exposure. So absolutely, there should be coordinated work with local suppliers in how to develop this in a phased approach, because it's important, as you don't want to overinvest and then be without a project or a next well and then be with an overhead that you cannot manage going forward, and the risk exposure is high. So we need to do that very cautiously. Therefore, there's much to be done, and we're working hard as an industry with the government, and that's why we suggest to follow a roadmap, and the roadmap is to do that baseline study, which was done last year, was launched last year, but that needs to be refreshed with new suppliers to understand how we can match not only the suppliers, but the workforce. So there's much work to be done, and then having the dialogue. The second one is, it was mentioned to wait on the FPSO, and not really, right? But why I say the difference between the exploration from the other is that once you have an FPSO going forward, you have clarity for the next 25, 30 years of what's going to happen. Therefore, you can plan accordingly, and local investors can plan according to it, and then it's done in first the low-hanging fruits, which is how the IBS is established, and then you move to more specialized services. But the idea, and what we're trying to achieve, is that with that local content policy, at the end, everything or almost everything, or what Namibia chooses, it's local. So definitely it's something that we need to keep discussing. And then about the question about green hydrogen and oil and gas, the first slide said, we are not competing, we should be complementing each other. And you're right, there has to be more coordination, not only with the green hydrogen, but also with the mining sector and the other extractive industries, and we need to work together and find how we do these synergies, because as a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, which are core skills, can be cross-functional among all those sectors. So definitely it's something that we need to do more of.
Thank you. If I could maybe just add a couple of words on the last question. So the green hydrogen industry has formed a national task force on education, research, skills development, and it's a cross-cutting task force that cuts across the training institutions, NQF, NTA, and also the green hydrogen developers. The idea is that we try and match skill demand with skill supply, and then try and capacitate the different institutions. I think, so I'm serving on that committee. I think it's a great committee, and it's going to add a lot of value. And what's great about the working groups that we've had this week is I think we've also got to engage and know each other better. So we need to reach out to each other and see how we can work together better. Yeah. Thank you.
We make a public agreement here.
Thank you very much. That now concludes our working group discussion. Can we please give Dr. Muller and Mr. Rodriguez another round of applause? If I can kindly ask our photographer to please just take the photo opportunity. In the meantime, I will now begin to welcome our next speakers, who will be providing our final presentation for the working groups that will focus on the mining and adjacent sectors. I would kindly like to ask Mr. Irvin Simata, who is the second Vice President and the Chamber of Mines and Energy, and also the Executive Vice President of Swakop Uranium, to kindly make his way to the stage, and as well as Ms. Zenzi Awases, who's the President of the Women in Mining Association of Namibia and the lead consultant for Empower Mine Consulting Services. A round of applause, please.
Your Excellency, distinguished guests from government and private sector, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the mining sector, that is large-scale and small-scale miners, to say that we are privileged to be given the opportunity to present our position this afternoon. In fact, I must say, Your Excellency, you might notice that my movements will be limited. At the 160 kilograms, I just want to make sure that the stage can handle the weight. This is Group 5. The working group itself, as highlighted, is the mining sector and adjacent sectors. Our scope covers from exploration right up to export and market access. Your Excellency, listening to your speech this morning, in fact, I would like to start with the speech from the Director General of the NPC. And I want to recall a few of the things that he outlined. He made comments around, we are here to make commitments, and those commitments must be tracked, and indeed, the results must be measured. And in your keynote address, which Madam President, I must say, has invigorated new energy in most of us, you made the point that the efforts of coming together and having the many meetings will be fruitless if the discussions do not result in real economic outcomes. I hope that our presentation will reflect exactly that commitment. And in fact, we want to point out that we've only focused on the next 4 years. As you highlighted, 7 months is gone. We'll only be focusing on the 4 years. We have taken the wisdom and guidance of a few documents, which I think a lot of the speakers have already spoken to. In the first place, the SWAPO Manifesto Implementation Plan, which, as Madam President, you highlighted, identifies the mining sector as the #1 enabler. And there is emphasis with targets on mineral beneficiation. And then, of course, NDP 6 emphasizes the need for increasing processed mineral exports. There is, of course, the big elephant in the room, which is the equity discussion from 51 to 60%. Your Excellency, that particular discussion, we are encouraged that it is being taken upon at different platforms. And therefore, for the purposes of my presentation, we'll touch on it, but not necessarily in depth, or else we'll be here until the cows come home. And then, of course, there's the necessity to attract new mining investment in the order of 30 billion, as envisaged in NDP 6. And of course, there are many others, guiding documents that we have consulted in order to get to the submission that we'll present to you. Now, simply put, Your Excellency, we want to remind the audience that the mining sector remains the cornerstone of the Namibian economy. On date, we account for 50% of foreign exchange earnings. In fact, history will show that although there is a decline in GDP contribution from 30%, or north of 30% in the 1980s, to now averaging between 10 to 14% purely on account of economic diversification, we continue to inject the much-needed capital and necessary jobs within the Namibian economy. On date, Your Excellency, we account for 20,800 jobs. That is, in fact, a 14.6% jump from 2023. And with our submission today, we want to make a commitment for the next 4 years in terms of capital investment and then jobs. But of course, that is contingent on us holding each other accountable. So to get right into it, Your Excellency, this is our commitment to you. We have canvassed, we have consulted, we have spoken to the broader large-scale mining industry, and in our assessment, we are committing between new projects and expansions to be able to inject in the order of 2.8 billion US dollars over the next 4 years. resulting in the creation of new jobs in the order of 18,148. I hope that the 148 suggests that there was indeed consultation. We have not rounded it off. We've left it as it is. The detail, Madam President, we are prepared to present to you, and I guess we'll do that separately so that you can understand how that capital injection and the job creation is going to happen. What I want to nuance on this particular slide, Madam President, this excludes our ability, of course, to reduce the current vacancy factor, which on average is about 7% in our industry. This also excludes our current initiatives to absorb what we noted on the agricultural slide, the 19,000 qualified professionals in the various fields of endeavor who are ready to be employed. I'll now take the opportunity to go through the various sectors just to talk to how the 2.8 and the 18,000 jobs will come about. In the gold sector, Your Excellency, we have a new project in the form of Osino, committed, under construction, and it will deliver jobs, permanent jobs in the next 18 months when it goes into full production. And that is just in and around 350 to 400 million US. In terms of expansions, Your Excellency, we've got 2 expansions that are currently underway beyond DFS. In fact, at least one approved. That is between Navahab Underground Project and the recently approved B2 Gold expansion project. Now, the point I want to highlight here when I say we need to hold each other accountable, Honorable President, underground mining in Namibia lacks the skills required from project management to operational execution. Reason being that the majority of the mining that has happened in Namibia, time immemorial, and on the back of Mr. Zacharias Lewala picking up a diamond in 1929, has been predominantly open pit. That particular sector requires an injection of foreign skills beyond which then, of course, ourselves and government can hold each other accountable in terms of the transfer of the skills that those external experts will come and inject in this particular country. Let me move on to the uranium sector. Madam President, you'll be happy to know that Namibia, since 2022, ranks 3rd in terms of uranium production. Of course, I'm not here to speak about the sector that just left now, but I want to inform you that if there's any baseload discussion to be had, the uranium sector cannot be left out of that discussion. Uranium is green energy. We are 3rd largest producer of uranium in the world. With the introduction of new projects and the expansions, I have absolutely no doubt that Namibia in the next 2 years will not only be 2nd largest producer in the world, but at least one of our entities will become the 2nd largest producing entity in the world. Now, in terms of the new projects, Madam President, we've got the Bannerman Etango project, which currently is under construction, I must inform you. Some 700 jobs that will come in the next 4 years, that particular project. We've also got the Tumas project at DFS and almost final decision making, more than 400 million US investment. And those particular projects together most likely will bring in about 1,500 jobs and almost about 700 million US in foreign direct investment. In terms of expansions, as you know, Madam President, Namibia boasts some of the largest uranium assets in the world, being Rosing and Husab. Those assets are not only intending to maintain current employment and investment, but they're also intending to increase. And they've got 2 particular expansion projects that they are currently busy and almost on a final approval stage. And again, I want to mention here that within your 4 years of tenure, should those projects come online, and they will, we are definitely going to realize the dream of Namibia being the 2nd largest producer of uranium. And certainly that is enough motivation for government to insist on this baseload energy sector. In terms of infrastructure, Madam President, I only focus on one, which is the Husab Namwater Desalination Plant. Yes, while the agriculture sector was speaking, it looks like they summoned the gods and the rain indeed did come. But I want to inform you, Madam President, that one of the key infrastructure challenges that we have in mining is the availability of water. It is a fact. As we stand here, the new uranium projects are contingent on the availability of water. And at the moment, the current projects which are currently in execution already have a deficit in some order of 600 to 800 cubic meters. Now, of interest is that the fact that water is a challenge has been known over 20 years. The fact that there was necessity to build a desalination plant has been known over 20 years. Madam President, my personal involvement in trying to negotiate and get the Husab and Namwater desalination has been for 5 years. We sit here and the decision is yet to be made. You spoke about a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. We are available to sign tomorrow to begin that journey. The integrated marine phosphate sector. There are many attributable words to this particular sector. The most appropriate is controversial. Madam President, the legalities, the science, the necessity on this particular sector has already been exhausted and it is known. The potential for this sector in terms of direct jobs, we commit to you is about 5,000 jobs, direct jobs. And given that this sector has spin-offs in terms of the fertilizer industry, we estimate that up to 45 or 50,000 jobs can come off the initiation of this particular sector. However, we once again sit here with no decision as to how we proceed. Perfect. In terms of zinc, this particular one, Madam President, is purely just security of energy. Again, it speaks to baseload. Scorpion zinc requires baseload to be able to operate. Let me summarize, Madam President, because I've already taken, and I knew I was going to take a bit of time. So, the issues within the mining sector are around policy uncertainty, 51% ownership, free carry, whether it's policy or not, etc., etc. We have a litany of outstanding legislation, Madam President. The Minerals Bill, which is meant to replace the Minerals Act of 1992, is outstanding. NEAF, Mine and Health Safety Regulation, all of these remain outstanding. In terms of infrastructure, I will not repeat myself. We know in the industry, water and electricity are key, particularly security of them, and then the economic viability of them. Skills gap, I have already spoken to it, Madam President. And lastly, beneficiation. Beneficiation is a function of the availability of the infrastructure to be able to do that. Scorpion Zinc and Dundee are beneficiating plants which are dependent on infrastructure such as water and electricity. Of course, the last point I want to make on beneficiation, Madam President, is the question of transition from EPZ to SEZ, which must be finalized urgently so that there is room for beneficiation in terms of the sector. My sincere apologies, I have taken the time for the most important sector, which is the most small-scale miners. I will now hand over to my co-presenter, Madam Zenzi, if you can please take it away. Thank you.
Your Excellency, honorable ministers and distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about a topic that's very dear to my heart. Please, I have to, because my esteemed colleague promised me he will only stick to 10 minutes, but he went to 15 minutes, and I have to speak about this. Now, my contribution today looks at a group of people that is often overlooked, but are actually a very important part of this discussion. We know that the mining industry is very capital intensive. Oh, it would help if I go to the slide. So I was going to talk about this very interesting equation that I came across, which is the Cobb-Douglas equation, which basically says that the output is a function of capital, technology, and labor. Now, how this applies to the mining industry is that we know there's a capital-intensive industry, right? And capital, so investment in equipment, infrastructure, and financing, all increase in output. So if you increase the output, the more capital we have, raises the productivity. Labor, which is skill, workforce, and size, and safety, represents the miners, the engineers, the people who are actually doing the work, and that will boost productivity. Better labor conditions reduce downtime, accidents, and inefficiency. Now, the A refers to the total productivity, which is innovation and efficiency, which is crucial in this industry. That's the intangible part, and that basically is what increased capital gives you. Capital. We can see this by the number of the amount of investment that the industry has. We have over 20 multinational mines in this country, which is a good thing because it shows that we have raised capital. But the real multiplier here are the Namibian people, especially our women and youth, because they represent not just a demographic trend, but a demographic dividend. So, with all of this, what I'm trying to say is mining will remain the main pillar of economy, but the next gains will come from widening participation and deepening capabilities. And to do this, we need to look at three groups of people, or rather three groups of subsectors, which is the ASM, mining-related MSMEs, and the participation of women and youth. Now, the ASM, right now, as we speak, represents about 10,000 miners in Namibia, and it's estimated that they support about 25,000 dependents, so households. And ASM occurs right across all 14 regions, but especially in Kunene, Erongo, and Karas. And the sector was traditionally known for mining gemstones, semi-precious stones, and like aquamarine, topaz, and amethyst, but they've now moved on to high value and critical minerals such as copper. But the challenge here is that the sector remains largely informal. They're complex to regulate and they have limited access to equipment, and their practices are still very much outdated in terms of how they mine. However, there is opportunities in the form of mineral beneficiation and value addition. Currently, in the Kunene region represents Namibia's next strategic mineral and energy frontier with vast untapped resources that can expand the nation's mining footprint. Exploration and development are ongoing, and multiple companies, Namibian companies, are advancing projects and consolidating licenses in that area. Now, the economic potential of that is that it can create more jobs and given economic growth in the region. But with targeted investment and coordinated planning, the Kunene can become the next hub of mining, of the economy. However, the sector currently faces, and I've just put it, there's a lot of challenges, but I'm going to concentrate on just two big ones, which is the regulatory complexity. The ASM, so we say there are 10,000 miners currently operating across the country, but currently only about 951 claims are registered. And if you speak to them, the reason is that the current regulatory system, though accommodating, fails to accommodate them really, because they have to travel down to Windhoek to come and apply and renew their licenses. And they also are administrative demands that impose high costs and time investments. And they also have limited access to land. Now, this is an interesting one, and earlier today, I think with the agriculture group, we spoke about it. The fact that the claims are landlocked by EPL holders as well as farms creates a problem for the ASM. And they also have a limited access to geological data, but this is not exactly at fault of anybody else. It's the fact that the geological survey currently is also quite limited. Then there is the MSME, the mining-related enterprises, which are quite essential in growing part of the mining industry, driving local economic growth and regional development. Now, these are the companies that basically supply services to the mining industry. And these can also be contributing to the adjacent sectors. Right now, conservatively, where's my time gone? I'm sorry. There are high concentrations in specific mining towns and significant involvement in transport services and value addition. Mining-related MSMEs supplied over 24 billion, and this is a statistic that comes from Chamber of Mines, 24 billion in goods and services in the sector in 2024, and this number can increase. However, the challenges faced by the MSMEs is access to finance. Since it's a very capital-intensive industry, access to finance remains one of the most critical barriers for the enterprises. Skills and technology gaps, preventing their participation in high-value contracts, and infrastructure and connectivity constraints. Now, I cannot continue this conversation without speaking about the most untapped potential that's offered by involving women and youth into the sector. Currently, women make up about 18% of Namibia's mining workforce, and only about 10% have held executive roles since 2009, with even lower representation in technical position and leadership. Youth participation is even more minimal, with a few structured pathways from education. Why does this matter? We have just discovered with the Cobb-Douglas equation that innovation is one of the key enablers to open up the sector. But it thrives more in inclusive environments. So if you give way to more people, you will have more innovation and sustainability. Now, the youth brings a digital fluency. We need things like droning and stuff like that, and they bring a new perspective to the industry, which is very important when we're modernizing the mineral value chain. Now, the GDP contribution rose to 13% in 2024, a decline, as Irvin has just said, but I strongly believe that that number can increase if we are becoming more inclusive. So I have to emphasize here that empowering women and youth isn't just a charity, it's actually a strategy on how we can lead sustainable mining transformation. Now, I have grouped this into 4 recommendations. Start off by formalizing and upgrading ASM and MSME. We have to find a way to establish and fast-track low-cost licensing window for ASM. We have to develop and implement an ASM land access framework to ensure secure and transparent access and better coordination. Provide geoscience access, because once people know where they are mining, it will reduce a lot of stuff and actually open up more opportunities. In terms of finance, launch an equipment, leasing, and working capital facility for ASM and MSMEs backed by partial guarantees, and pair every loan with mandatory safety and business training. Now, this can be done because this has worked in our region. In Zimbabwe, for example, there's a bank called Empower Bank. Offer performance-based grants, introduce tax incentives for mining-related equipment. In Zambia, for example, they don't charge import duty on machinery that's used for mining and agriculture, that in itself will make things a bit easier for people. Put women and youth at the center of your capacity building. I've put a list on here, but I think one of the important things that I can maybe highlight here is if you offer mentorship to the youth, to women in mining, as well as to the MSMEs. In other words, pair them with people who've already done it, and so they can know where they can improve, or they can do a reciprocal mentorship as well. The Women in Mining Association of Namibia has just launched a mentorship and coaching program where we are pairing women and MSMEs, as well as those in ASM, with experienced leaders from the industry, and then we are coaching them in leadership development, and that basically encourages women not to leave the industry as it is. Yeah, I will leave it here. Thank you.
Your Excellency, while Ricardo is walking up here, in terms of the actions based on the constraints that we've identified, Mr. Ricardo.
We've given you additional 5 minutes already.
Okay, perfect. Was that additional 5 minutes?
That was done. Additional 5 already.
All right, so let me just maybe put in one word. One word.
Then I'm giving you special treatment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Your Excellency, in terms of the ask from the industry this afternoon, number one, we believe that true to form and the message that you set out this morning, we truly believe that we could start by taking the first step immediately tomorrow by signing that HUSAB and NAMWATA agreement. It will liberate a lot of the pending decisions on new projects. I see quite a couple of nods in the crowd. Secondly, Madam President, we would like to propose that the pending legislation can be dealt with by creating an interministerial and private sector committee with timelines that are set for that particular committee. And I say this because it's taken us 20 years on some of the legislation, 5 years on some of the legislation. We would like to propose that these legislations be dealt with in the next 6 months. And then on infrastructure, we would also like to propose that the Ministry of Finance, NIPDP, the NPC, including the public service institutions such as NAMWATA and NAMPower, could collaborate with us to put together a financial plan on how we can execute these corridor infrastructure projects. In any event, the majority of the funding that initiates this infrastructure, the industry pays for it. We just need to understand where the priorities are. And lastly, in terms of the small miners, Madam President, we must accept that previous interventions by government before have not been very successful. We want to learn the lessons of those interventions and at least allocate some funding in terms of how we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Zenzi, only for now. Unfortunately, the executive mother is in the house, so I cannot chastise anybody further. Nonetheless, thank you very much for the contributions. I know it's very, very difficult. I know oftentimes when you sit on platforms like this, there's a need, and I know a lot of you have many ideas. So please, don't forget, if you don't get an occasion to ask a question or comment, don't hold it to yourself. Send those contributions to the email. We just now open up the floor for questions. Please hold the hand high so that we can know who we need to attend to. So we've got one there and two on the other side. Please take the microphone there as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's Rian Burger. I'm CEO of NAMDEP. Very proud to say that both the presenters are ex-NAMDEP employees. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you were both bursars as well. Fantastic. So that's how we, I guess, invest in people over time. Your Excellency, I'm actually going to make use of the invitation to address some things that might be controversial. And there's an elephant in the room as far as I read the situation. We hear about a lot of frustration from investors. Previously, in the last session, we heard about people rather investing in Zambia because you can get things done. We heard Kauna talk about we're going to see capital moving unless things get done, unless they move. We've talked about, Irvin just talked about the challenges of actually just achieving the next step because we can't get it done here in the country. And I want to venture something, and that comes from the renowned management guru, Peter Drucker, that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Unless we have the right culture, unless we have a pro-business, pro-investment culture in government and in the ministries that we're dealing with, I'm sorry, then we will not succeed. We need pro-business culture, pro-business approach, so that the answer isn't no. The answer isn't let's fill in another document. The answer isn't putting more red tape. The answer, the default should be how can we help you to achieve the investments?
Thank you very much for your contribution.
And that, I think, is a very important point.
Round of applause. Thank you very much. Very, very important one. We need to work on the collective values of Namibians and how we deal with customer service in this country. A very, very important one there as well. Gentlemen, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Gita Petzold from the Hospitality Association representing private sector tourism. And you might think this is strange that I raise my voice now during the mining sector, but I want to, similar to the energy sector, want to demonstrate the complementing elements that are between mining and tourism. We have a wonderful story to tell. Gemstone tourism and the small miners are a beautiful story that we in tourism want to tell. But our appeal, and Mr. Simata mentioned it just now, is for an interministerial think tank complementary group that would sit tourism and mining down, maybe through the mining and the environmental commissioner, to make sure that whatever we do on a sustainable basis, and that we complement one another and not stand in each other's way. We've got beautiful examples with tourism and mining coming together during the uranium rush in the 2010, 2011. We've got beautiful partnerships now with mining companies such as Bannerman and the tourism industry, where we support one another in driving the cause of a united, thriving Namibia. And that is the appeal from tourism with the exploration rights. Let there be control and compromise where it's needed to make sure that our land is being developed sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Do you have any more takers before we bring it back to the floor? Okay, let's move that one there. Anyone on this end? Okay, very good.
Yeah, Philip Namunjebo Nida. Appreciation to Mr. Simata for when you talk about the uranium being the fourth largest producer of uranium, I think one appreciates the technology which is being deployed and very strategy to be able to be number 4. My question is more around the value chain creation, as well as probably how do we ensure that that number 4, that impactful transformational kind of arrangement trickle down to the Namibians?
Thank you very much. Last one before we bring it back, if any. There we have, Honorable Member of Parliament put his hand up. Now it's 30 seconds, Honorable Member. Are you not taking it? Okay. All right. Is it coming? Just give him the microphone. We'll come back to you as well. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies.
Thank you, Governor.
Yes, this is...
Correction for that, please.
Vipwakuye Muharukwa, Governor, Kunene Region, duly appointed by Her Excellency.
Give him a round of applause, please.
Indeed, I'm happy I have a collaborator that says Kunene Region is said to be the next hub of mining. Indeed, one of the minerals that is left out is iron ore. Iron ore, a huge deposit of iron ore in that region. that we cannot exploit because we don't have a railway. Various other minerals that we cannot exploit or use or benefit from because of a lack of infrastructure. Now, I see the tendency, unlike the desalination plant that I had, for business and the private sector to say the government must put the infrastructure, will then use the conducive environment to extract the minerals. I would plead for the private sector to take the government's hand and actually put up the infrastructure that are needed to ensure that we can beneficiate from these resources. Thank you. Because I keep saying, and I do so unapologetically, that the Kunene region has the potential to transform the whole northern band, from Cape Freya to Ngoma in Zambezi. But the lack of infrastructure is holding the whole northern band hostage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Governor, for that. As duly appointed by the President, I think one of the important ones to also note is that Kunene region is also earmarked as part of part of the Southern Corridor Development Initiative. So a third green hydrogen valley is also part of the plans for Kunene as well, because it has both solar and wind as well. Thank you very much for that. Let's give it back to you so that you can add value. Sure. Is there any response from that side, Irvin?
Yeah, sure. Maybe just 2 comments from my side. The first one on how the benefits, uranium benefits, trickle down to the country. Firstly, I like to look at this from a pyramid approach, 3-pronged approach. Number one, as an industry, not only uranium, but the mining industry, we are heavily involved in uplifting the communities that host us through social investment. That's the first point. If you notice, in the last year, 2024, the industry spent in the region of 264 million Namibian dollars on social investment. The second pillar that I like to look at is local procurement. Local procurement in the sense that of the revenues that the industry generated in 2024, some 51 billion, 80% of that remained in the country. In fact, 24 billion of that was spent on local procurement. I must admit that it doesn't mean that there's no room for improvement. I think the room for improvement relates to SMME development. I mean, there is a lot of work to do there in terms of how we develop the SMEs. I also believe that there is scope in terms of aiding, given that we put the inputs into manufacturing. There's definitely room to develop that. Then, of course, the most controversial one, which is the question of ownership, is that the industry itself has never actually been adverse against ownership. However, mining is a capital-intensive industry, and certainly conversations around free carry, which in essence does not exist, because ultimately there is a price to be paid, has to be seen in the context of the risks that whoever wants to get involved can take. The fact of the matter is that the results or the outcomes of ownership are dividends. And unfortunately, in our industry, dividends do not come by easily. And of course, that's a risk that one can take. So to the point, to the question that I was asked, I want to highlight that I think uranium particularly on these 3 pillars has done extremely well. On the other end, which is the beneficiation part, the beneficiation, I'm particularly passionate about this because not only are we, again, just for correction, we are the 3rd largest uranium producing country in the world, and we also host the 3rd largest producing asset of uranium. The jump from being a mining entity or a mining country to being a uranium energy producer requires a little bit of geopolitical engineering, where the mining sector has got a very limited role. Who wears it best? But you know, that gentleman that wears the tie like mine, and many others. So once that roadmap is open, we can declare here and now that we are ready, we have the inputs, we are ready to participate in terms of...
That as much as we are looking at investing in infrastructure, etc., you cannot unlock even the Kunene without investing in the Namibian people. So invest in skills, invest in just even the ASM, because that area is not just minerals and stuff, but they are actually mining this ore themselves, and they are there digging around. So invest in the ASM as well.
There we go. Thank you very much. A round of applause for the two, please. Thank you very much, Erwin. Thank you very much, Erwin. Round of applause, please. Kindly stand for your picture. Kindly stand for your picture. Now, you know that Erwin is a senior. He's an executive vice president of Swakop Uranium, so he's used to not getting instructions from anybody. He gives the instructions. What we'll do now is quickly go for a short break for about 20 minutes exactly. At 5:05, we want to come back here so that the head of state can give us her reflections before we move for the second day. Please stand as she leads us into the exit. Please, let's be back in here at 5 so that 5:05 we can start with the closing reflections by the president. Thank you.
Oh, please take your seat. I thought you want the blood to flow. Thank you very much, our able directors of ceremonies, and who have also served as moderators for our working groups, and really to recognize all of you. And I was not wrong at the beginning that when I looked into the room, I'm really looking at prosperity, because I can see the room is still full, meaning there's a great interest. We are all joined together as a nation with a common focus. Now, I'm asked to do a reflection, and I must say that this is one of the easiest sessions for one to make a reflection. Why it is the easiest is because we are all saying the same, only using different words. And that is what is really encouraging me in the position where I am. Because clearly, from the discussion, we all said we are part of the journey to take our country to prosperity, a journey for us to build a Namibia in which everybody wants to be. Some of the issues raised here reinforcing one another on what should we do as the private sector as well as the public sector. One thing I have really to appreciate and to acknowledge our governors who have sat here throughout, because some of these issues, it's you and me who should play a role in addressing the side of the government. I'm disappointed that I'm not seeing many ministers here, and that's very serious. That is very, very serious, but also maybe making my life easy, since I'm the only one who was here listening to the nation, and I can direct what the people are saying that should be done. I know the full reflection will be done tomorrow at the closing session. However, from what we have discussed, they are quite fundamental issues that are mentioned, and the good thing, both the private and the public sector, we have a role to play. One is for us to review our policies to identify which one needs some readjustment and which ones are still valid. Because no one can convince me that all the policies in the Republic of Namibia are not serving us. The little steps we are making is because of some of those policies. So we cannot really talk about all the policies in totality, but we need to identify the policies that need review. Inefficiency service delivery. To me, this is really the key. That if we improve, because even if you have good policies, like the ones that we are having, and there is no mind shift for people really to serve the nation, that is just going to delay the whole process. And this is my worry. I hope some of you have watched when we were closing the binational commission between Namibia and Botswana. My counterpart has to speak on behalf of us as the co-chair. And one thing he mentioned, which we both agree, our civil servants are frustrating the leaders. Our public servants are frustrating the leaders. And one thing that is killing us, which has not been mentioned here, is corruption. And the corruption is two-way traffic. It will be very difficult for me to handle corruption if the private sector, because of being frustrated by the civil servants, you want to make a shortcut and give something. They will just get used to it. I will not be able to handle that. Can you help me that for us to root out corruption, be patient and talk about that I have applied from this time to this time and nothing is coming. Of course, I will be accused of micromanaging. But what can I do if I'm forced to do micromanaging? I want things to be done because I want you to tell me I'm applying and for the past 3 months, and this is officer so-and-so and so-and-so whom I'm dealing with, and nothing is coming. Let me know. I will call the minister and say, tell this officer to give the facts to me. Why is not giving this application? Honestly, if we are not doing that, we are not going to solve the problem. That is the biggest problem I'm facing in this country. In order to improve on service delivery, people must be put to task. People must be known. I know you are business people, you don't have time. When they are forcing you, you give. I don't know. I don't know how many of you in this room who have given. I don't know. Seriously. I don't know how many of you sitting in this room who have given under the table for you to be given service. And that's why it's difficult for me to handle it. I don't like it. People are paid. They applied for a job. It is in their contract how much they are going to be paid, and they accept it. But all of a sudden, you have that situation. Can we help one another? And then the issue of coordination. Yes, it has come very out. We need to coordinate. Somebody says private sector to private sector, public sector to public sector, and then private sector to public sector. You know, as a Minister of International Relations, I have been trying to create a link between the Namibian business people and the other countries' business people. Somebody has taken my words and take it into another dimension, which I very much welcome. When I said we are too few to be poor, One of the panelists has said, we can also say we are too few to work in isolation. I agree with that analogy. As a business people, how united are you? How united are you? There was a time of commerce which is having regional branches and so on. Now I don't know what is happening. I don't know what is happening. Also help me so that when I'm talking to the business people. So that is very important, coordination. And that's why in the government, we need also to coordinate. That's now my responsibility. That the ministries, state-owned enterprise, we need to coordinate. And after we did our coordination, we go to the private sector, but the private sector should also have their coordination. In doing that, I am sure we are going to achieve a lot. Another issue that has been coming in all the presentation is incentives. Incentives. Every topic discussed here is incentives. I agree with you. I agree with you, but let us help one another. Because it should come out clear what type of incentives we are talking about. Those incentives, if they are tax-related, if I remove them in my budget for 2025, 2026, is 89 billion. Now, if today I leave this room and I say I'm going to remove and give incentives, will I be able to reach April next year with this budget? Help me to come out with those incentives. Tell me what these incentives have been bringing in the government coffer, and give me how I can fill that gap. In that way, we are talking business. I cannot really, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my pest controller. Serious is my pest controller. If I have just to say, and I decide that this incentives go, this import levy go, this import levy go, how do I fill the gap of what those imports would? But I agree with you, we must be competitive. What I'm saying is, in saving the private sector, we should not kill the public sector. We should try to have a balance. I know we can say taking them away immediately is an investment, but I have promised the Namibian nation that come January, I have to allow every Namibian child who qualify for higher education and vocational training to register and pay tuition fees from the state coffer. So therefore, anything to be done between now and January, it should not really interfere with that undertaking. So this is really, I say, we need to work together, we need to understand each other. Other things, there were very good proposals, for example, task forces. And I like people who give time frame. Set up a task force on health, put up a task force on housing, most critical social sector in this country, and give us 2 months to report. That's a welcome proposal. He said, I will take that up seriously because I want action to be taken. So I'm so happy that the discussions were really open. The discussion were focusing on the real issues. And I'm ready. The government under my leadership is ready for us to accommodate one another. So let us identify those incentives, mention them as not generalized, whether they are 5, they are 10, they are 20, and also budget costed them, the incentives. That currently these incentives are bringing into the government coffer, or not incentives, these costs are bringing the following amount into the government coffer, and if we have now to take them as incentives, this is what is going to be the gap. However, that should not be a worry to the government, because immediately these particular activities will jump in and fill the gap immediately. So that will help me really. I'm very accommodative. I want the private sector to work, and I want this economy to thrive, which we have to do together. The other issues, I think I talked already about the task forces that I'm considering very seriously, and all the sectors that we have really discussed today, they are talking to the real issues. You see, it's very important. When I was talking about the SWAPO election manifesto, there were some people think I was politicizing I cannot, because the SWAPO election manifesto is the document I was having in my hand in 2024. And it's on that base the people have voted for me and voted for SWAPO. And thank you. And I said once I'm voted, I'm for all Namibia. But I must follow that roadmap, because in 2029, you are going to look at that document. And you say you were telling us this, you were telling us this, you were telling us this. It will now become a live document. I want it to be live, and that's why we incorporate it in NDP 6. So really, I think from here I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep because I have seen Namibians speaking the same language. It encourages me. The young boy there, who has even made a concrete proposal, I'll tell the Minister of Health, is from NAMFAM, who say they want to collaborate on digitalization. I'm taking all these things. So, once again, Namibians, this is the way to go. Our third First Lady, I don't know if First Lady was saying, you said you give us the whole day. I say, yes, I'll give you the whole day. I'll give you the whole day tomorrow, but please, it's not for nothing. It's not for nothing. These 2 days, I'm giving them seriously. They are not for nothing. So all the issues that we have talked about, we talk about the laws. I'm equally frustrated by these laws, which are taking too long, unnecessary. I have here decided, and I did it with a purpose, to bring the upstream oil and gas into my office for a purpose. But why is the law not coming? Maybe I have to talk about digitalization. In order to talk about digitalization, in order to take out the human face, because it's the one creating problems. It's also in the manifesto. Have you noted that? That even in tendering and what in the manifesto, we say, let it be online, so that there's no human face. You talk about visas and all these things. So let us really try. But when you have people, I'm not really an IT person, but I don't know if somebody could easily put a virus, and then you just have a problem. I don't know if it's possible or it's not possible, but you know better, those of you who are in the digital world. So, energy was mentioned here. And nuclear energy, I am bold enough to say we are going for that. We are part, you know, we have been just threatening ourselves for nothing. We are part of international instruments that allows for peaceful use for nuclear for peaceful use. In Namibia, we have signed all these instruments. And because of that, nothing will prevent us to go that way. As I'm here now, I have already set up a team in the Office of the Prime Minister, which is chaired by the chairman of the Atomic Energy Board of Namibia, for them to work on our white paper of moving to nuclear energy. Industrialization, you need strong energy. And you know, this is coming a long way. It was planted in my mind in 2008, when I was a Minister of Environment and Tourism. I have people already saying she likes environment. I had an engagement with school children of grade 10 to 12. And they asked me that question: when is Namibia going to move and make use of our uranium for energy? Because we want to innovate, but energy is a problem in this country. Back in 2008, yeah, those children, they asked me. So I told them there's no problem, time will come. Maybe time has come. I might not see it in the office where I am, but I must really create the ground. You don't do things for you to see. When the third president was talking about green hydrogen, he was just creating a foundation. Now we are talking about it. He has not seen it, but let's know it's coming. That's how things are done. You don't do things for you to see them. You do them for the future. You must have a vision for all these things. So we had a long day. Honestly, it was a lovely day for me to see Namibians in one room as really true representation of Namibia and talking with one voice. And I must tell you, each and every one of you, I have taken you serious. My rapporteurs have to work very hard, put everything together, but we need an implementation mechanism as a matter of agency. And the proposals for task force is very appealing to me. So thank you very much. We will do the further reflection tomorrow, depends on the outcome. But really, you made me proud, Namibians. Sincerely, you made me proud. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those reflections. Indeed, as you have remarked, we are all speaking the same language, and that language speaks to taking Namibia forward. Your Excellency, this direct engagement with our leadership embodies the very essence of this forum, and that speaks to creating national dialogue that listens, responds, and acts.
Well, of course, having said that, tomorrow we still have a number of working groups that we are going to address. Of course, we're going to be starting off with a panel discussion that will be chaired by the Governor of the Bank of Namibia, Dr. Johannes Kavagap, and of course, Salomo Hay from High Economic Intelligence will be moderating that on as well. It's going to be a very, very interesting conversation that we'll have, talking about the vision to action, delivering on Namibia's jobs, and of course the agenda followed up by a Q&A for that as well. A very, very serious conversation when it comes to employment as well, and a number of working groups that will follow after that. But before we get to that, I know it's been quite a long day. I don't want to delay you with another long remark. We've got cocktail ready for you to continue networking, but just one reminder. As I mentioned before Her Excellency came in, that was a conversation between you and I. Let's please maintain that tomorrow, as we said. The respect that we show to the institution, that's very, very important. So let's be on time tomorrow morning so that we can start with the proceeding and, of course, deliver on the promise for the Namibian child. Thank you so much. Let's please stand for Her Excellency to head out. Thank you.